Final battle is over, and the new time skip reveals the fate of Deku, Bakugo, Ochaco, and so much more. Japan is being rebuilt, the international heroes are there helping, but is this the end? Or did this chapter just confirm that the story is not over? Let's talk about it right now. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy my MHA videos and you want me to keep them going, leave a quick like and comment right now for that YouTube algorithm. And subscribing on YouTube is completely free, but it helps me out a lot, so please subscribe now. In the last chapter, we saw the downfall of All For One as a huge team effort by Deku and the other heroes on the outside and One For All vestiges on the inside led to All For One's body completely crumbling as his super regeneration failed. In one final desperate gamble, All For One tried to hold his body together by force, and then he attempted to transfer his quirk factor into Deku in order to make him his new vessel now that his current body was crumbling into dust. It looked like All For One was actually pretty close to making contact with Deku and possessing his body, but then Kurogiri and Bakugo intervened in order to prevent All For One from making contact with Deku and turning him into his vessel. It seems that Kurogiri basically died after helping Deku because he drained himself too much with that final warp gate. And Bakugo was severely injured already, so after he helped Deku, he just kind of collapsed and continued to lie there, almost dead but too stubborn to actually die because it's Bakugo. Now, as Deku used the embers of One For All to land one final punch on All For One, the vestiges within One For All reactivated and attacked All For One from the inside, along with the vestige, or I guess the personality, of Tomura himself. Tomura's personality nearly vanished entirely after All For One took over his body, but Nana, his grandma, intervened and stopped him from disappearing completely. In the end, after being exposed as a deeply lonely man who actually loved his brother but was incapable of expressing it with anything other than violence, All For One was defeated. Tomura, Shigaraki, and Deku got to have one final exchange where they said their goodbyes, in a sense, and then Tomura's body turned into little more than dust. And so All For One finally died. Tomura died along with him, and Kurogiri also warped his last gate. Deku won, the heroes won, and so seemingly the final battle of the series came to an end. The latest chapter starts off with a short time skip to several days after the battle. We are listening to my weather waifu Meryl, who appears to be reporting out of Washington, DC. The weather has finally cleared up, although the wind is still strong. This strong wind was seemingly generated by Deku's punch that ended that final war against All For One. I'm not 100% sure if what she's saying here is just supposed to be symbolic, or if Deku's fight with All For One literally generated strong wind gusts that made it all the way to America. I'm definitely not a meteorologist, so forgive me if I don't know enough about international wind patterns. Back in Japan, we see heroes like Cementos and the Egyptian hero Salam working on rebuilding one of the many buildings that collapsed during the war. The efforts to rebuild Japan have been moving very quickly thanks to all the international heroes who arrived to help with the rebuilding efforts. We see that the top hero from Singapore, Big Red Dot, is also there and currently giving an interview to a reporter, as many heroes and hero students use both their physical strength and their quirks to repair and rebuild all the damage. In the days before quirks appeared, this rebuilding effort would have taken a lot longer and it would have been a lot more difficult. But in the age of quirks, where so many people have superhuman strength and other incredible superpowers, it is much easier for them to complete this difficult job by coming together and combining all of their unique powers and abilities in service of a common goal. Along with all the heroes and hero students who are helping with the rebuilding effort, we even get a small panel of Koichi from the Vigilante prequel manga. And I always love to see Horikoshi throwing in these little Easter eggs of characters from his other works, as well as from the movies and from the prequel. And as the rebuilding efforts continue, we are taken to the central hospital where Bakugo is recovering from his many serious injuries. Both of his parents are also there in the room with him, looking after him and speaking to the doctor with him. The doctor says that Bakugo's right arm is so severely injured that it will probably never go back to normal. And although surgeries and rehab will help, he may need to use a prosthetic arm like Miruko if he wants to actually keep being a pro hero in the future. Well, this is definitely not great news, especially because Bakugo's quirk works off of his sweat. And if he had a prosthetic arm, then that arm obviously wouldn't be able to produce sweat. But Bakugo being Bakugo, he is simply too stubborn to accept the doctor's words, and he vows to work hard in rehab until he can regain full use of his arm again. The doctor warns him to only do light exercises because he is worried about Bakugo's heart. As we know, Edgeshot just barely managed to save Bakugo's life by repairing his heart and other internal organs after the battle on top of the floating UA. Frankly, the doctor doesn't even know how Bakugo managed to keep fighting after suffering such severe injuries, or how he managed to travel for so many kilometers in order to catch up to Deku and help him in the end. And this could be the key to Bakugo's recovery. Bakugo always goes plus ultra. He is too stubborn to give up, and he goes beyond what is conventionally considered possible and realistic. So who knows, maybe Bakugo really will be able to fully recover the use of his arm over time without needing to use a prosthetic. We then cut to a second room inside the same hospital, and here we see that the seriously injured Deku and All Might are recovering inside the same room together. For those keeping count, how many times has Deku been hospitalized since the story started? Let me know down in the comments if you've been keeping score, because I definitely lost count, but it has to be like half a dozen, right? Anyway, Deku is feeling better and he can feel his arms again, but Deku being Deku, he is upset that he wasn't able to save Tenko Shimura. He refers to Tomura as Tenko, and he says that even though Tenko changed there in the end and he stopped being driven by hate, he still didn't want to stop being the leader of the League of Villains. He didn't want to turn his back on his friends despite the fact that they were villains. In some ways, Tomura aka Tenko had his redemption because he turned against his master All For One and he contributed to defeating him. But he still didn't revert back into the same innocent civilian that little Tenko was. He is Tenko, but he is also Tomura at the same time. All Might asks Deku what Tenko's face looked like at the end, when he and Deku had their final exchange before Tenko's body disintegrated. Because if Deku no longer saw a crying little boy, then that means that Tenko's heart was saved in the end. As we saw, Tenko, or Tomura, or whatever you want to call him, wasn't crying in the end, and we learn in this chapter that he was almost smiling. In short, he remained an edgy but nuanced character until the end, certainly not good, but not completely evil either. All Might sensed that Deku had transferred One For All and its vestiges to Tomura during the final battle, and he believes that Tomura must have understood Deku's intentions. The vestiges of One For All were there to help fight off All For One and to give Tomura a chance at redemption. Deku says that yes, he did transfer One For All over to Tomura, but he still has more One For All embers inside of him. This seems to confirm that Deku didn't spend all of his remaining embers on that final attack. He still has some left, and he will continue to use them as long as he can. Now, how long will that be, and will it allow him to keep being a hero long term? I don't know, but comment down below what you think Deku will do in the future. Will he become quirkless, or will he keep using the embers for a long time, or will something else happen that kind of throws everything for a loop? This chapter also seems to confirm that the main One For All quirk itself was inside Tomura when he died, and so presumably both All For One and One For All died along with him. I was wondering whether Deku managed to get One For All back somehow at the very last second, like maybe when he made contact with Tomura that final time. But unless we learn more info in the future, we have to assume that the original One For All is now gone, and all that's left inside of Deku are its embers. At this point, Bakugo forces his way into Deku and All Might's room, even though he should have been resting in his own room. Bakugo overhears that Deku still has some of his quirk left, and he remembers how he and Deku used to proudly hold up their All Might cards as kids. He then also remembers how he used to bully Deku, and Bakugo begins to cry. Bakugo is clearly sorry for all the times that he treated Deku poorly, and he says that he wants to stay rivals and keep competing with Deku for a very long time. And this of course is the highest praise that anyone can ever hope to get from Bakugo. If he wants to be your rival forever, that means that he truly respects you. All Might praises both of them for getting so much stronger and improving so much as heroes since the day he first met them. When Deku stood up against all odds and made his way to All For One and defeated him, he became everyone's hero. And when Bakugo saved All Might's life several chapters earlier, Bakugo became his hero, because if it wasn't for Bakugo, All Might wouldn't even be here right now spending time with them and talking to them. For that reason, All Might says that the two of them are both the greatest heroes, and he thanks both of them for everything they've done and for all the sacrifices they've had to make. Now, if you're wondering whether this is the end, the actual final chapter of the story, because it definitely kind of feels that way, the narrator, who appears to be Deku himself, implies that this is not the end. He says that when he was younger, he thought that the world would automatically return to a state of peace as soon as a war ended, but that's not always the case, and their story is not over yet. As Deku and Bakugo both smile, we see Shoto from behind, and we see Ochaco looking out the window, presumably inside her own hospital room, which confirms that she is in fact alive, and we knew that would happen, but it's good to know for sure. The narrator says that they still need to create their bright future. They still need to go beyond, and the final page of the chapter gives us some very interesting images. We see Deku, Kaminari, Ida, and other students from behind as they walk towards the UA building, which is still in the process of being rebuilt after the war. Some time has clearly passed because Deku is walking normally and he appears to be fully recovered, so this indicates that we are at the beginning of a time skip epilogue. Deku now appears to have a permanent scar on the right side of his face, and the injury forced him to kind of change his hairstyle because a portion of his hair on the right side is now gone. This reminds us that Deku has been through a lot. He is not the same idealistic boy that he was when the story started. But even so, Deku is still Deku, and he is still on the same journey that he's been on all along. The journey to become a great and noble hero. This chapter was called Epilogue, and it definitely looks like we are wrapping things up and going into a time skip that will tell us what happens to everyone in the future. But this doesn't seem to be the final chapter. There is still more to the story, and I'm really wondering how many chapters we actually have left. Normally, Shonen Jump gives us a heads up at least a few weeks before a major manga ends, but as far as I know, there is no official announcement yet, so I'm not sure. We could have like one more chapter left or 3, I guess we'll have to wait and see. What do you guys think? How many chapters are left? Let me know down in the comments. Also, come on Horikoshi, where is Deku's dad? The final war is over. We're into a new time skip, and still no dad reveal. Are you really going to leave us hanging without any sort of resolution on Hisashi Midoriya? Please, Hori, please. We've been waiting so long. If you're looking for another epic MHA video to watch next, check out this video where we ranked the top 13 strongest multiple quirk users in MHA. Link on screen and in the description. If you enjoyed this video, leave a quick like to let me know, and don't forget to subscribe. It is completely free, but it helps me out a lot.